All right, so today we're diving into what is, without a doubt, one of the darkest and most revealing chapters in the entire Hebrew Bible, Judges 19. Now, I gotta be honest, this is a brutal story. It's tough to get through, but it's so important for understanding how a whole nation can just lose its way and what it might take to pull back from the brink of total self-destruction.
You're going to see this phrase pop up again and again in the book of Judges. And honestly, it is the key to everything that's about to happen. This isn't just some political observation, like, oh, they didn't have a president. No, it's a diagnosis. It's pointing to a deep moral and spiritual anarchy. When you don't have that central unifying authority, well, the nation is just about to completely spiral into chaos.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, we need to know when we are. We're in the period of the Judges. Think of it as this really chaotic gap in history. You've got the conquest of Canaan, led by Joshua. That's done. But Israel's first king, that's still way off in the future. So right now, it's just this loose collection of tribes. There's no real army, no unified court system, and as we're about to see in the worst way possible, a dangerously fractured moral compass.
So our story really kicks off with two main people. First, we've got a Levite. Now, if you remember, Levites are from Israel's priestly tribe. They're supposed to be the spiritual leaders. But here's the thing, and it's a huge clue. He's unnamed. That's not an accident. It's a symbolic detail, hinting that the spiritual leadership of the nation has become totally anonymous and, frankly, ineffective. His companion is a concubine, which is basically a secondary wife. It was a recognized status, but it left her in a really vulnerable position, both legally and personally. Okay, so the story gets going with what seems like a domestic dispute. The concubine, well, she leaves the Levite. The text is actually kind of vague on why, but she heads back to her father's house in Bethlehem. And for 4 whole months, nothing, just silence. Then, finally, the Levite decides he's going to go after her. The text says he wants to speak to her heart, try to win her back and persuade her to come home. So the Levite starts his journey to get her back. And at first, everything seems to be going really well. Her father is apparently thrilled to see him, gives him this super warm welcome. And this right here, this brings us to a concept that is absolutely 100% central to this entire tragic story: hospitality. Now, we have to get our heads around this. In the ancient world, hospitality wasn't just, being a nice host. It was a sacred duty. It was a covenant obligation. Offering food and shelter to a traveler, that was a direct measure of your righteousness, of your honor. And to refuse, that was a massive moral failure. Seriously, you have to keep this in mind because it is the standard by which pretty much everyone in this story is about to be judged. And you can almost feel the narrative slow down right here. For days, the father-in-law, who seems to be acting out of genuinely warm hospitality, keeps persuading them to stay. Just one more day, just one more meal. But here's the thing. This kindness, it has a fatal consequence. Every single delay pushes their departure later and later into the day until they're basically forced to travel at night through a land that has zero law and order. Okay, so night is falling, and the group is near a city called Jebus, which, by the way, we now know as Jerusalem, but back then it was a foreign city run by the Jebusites. And this is where the Levite makes a really fateful decision. He says, no way, we're not staying among foreigners. He decides to push on to the Israelite town of Gibeah, which was in the territory of the tribe of Benjamin. And this is the story's core tragic irony. The Levite was so worried about staying with foreigners that he pushed on to find safety among his own people. But when they get to the town square of Gibeah, nobody offers them a place to stay. Not a single person. And remember what we said about hospitality. This isn't just rude. This is a complete collapse of their sacred duty. It's the first huge red flag that something is deeply, deeply wrong in this Israelite town. Then, finally, one person steps forward, an old man. And it's so significant that the text tells us he, like the Levite, is also an outsider. He's not originally from Gibeah. He sees them and gets the danger of them staying in the public square. He's the one person who still upholds that sacred law of hospitality that all his neighbors have just thrown out the window. He brings them into his home, washes their feet, gives them food. All these are signs of true fellowship and covenant. But that feeling of safety, well, it lasts for about 5 minutes. Just as they're settling in, the house is suddenly surrounded by the men of the city. The Bible calls them sons of Belial, which is a term for just completely worthless, wicked, depraved men.
and they start pounding on the door with this horrifying demand. They want the host to send out his male guest, the Levite, so they can sexually assault him.
Now, if this whole scene is ringing a bell for you, if it sounds eerily familiar, it's supposed to. The author here is being very, very intentional. They are drawing a direct and frankly shocking parallel to another famous story of failed hospitality and unbelievable wickedness.
The story of Gibeah is a deliberate, chilling echo of the story of Sodom. I mean, just look at the comparison. In Genesis, you have Lot hosting angelic visitors. In Judges, an old man hosts Levite. In both stories, the men of the cities surround the house, demanding to assault the male guests. And in both cases, the host offers women, his own daughters even, to try and protect the men. The point here is a theological bombshell. A town in the heart of Israel has become just as wicked as Sodom, the city that was the literal symbol of ultimate depravity. What happens next is, well, it's one of the most horrific moments in the entire Bible. The Levite, in an act of just unthinkable cowardice and cruelty, takes his concubine and shoves her out the door into the hands of that mob. And the text describes what they did to her all night long with this very stark, very restrained language. It doesn't give graphic details because it doesn't have to. It lets the sheer horror of the act speak for itself. Then, at dawn, the woman stumbles back to the house. She collapses right on the threshold with her hands on the doorway. It's this final, silent picture of her reaching for the protection she was never given. And she dies right there on the doorstep. When the Levite opens the door in the morning, he finds her there. And his words, they are absolutely chilling in how cold and detached they are. He just says, "Up and let us be going." But of course, there was no answer. The silence that follows that command is just profound.
But what the Levite does next is beyond shocking. He puts her body on his donkey, takes her home, and then he takes a knife. He dismembers her body into 12 pieces.
Now, this gruesome act, it wasn't just an act of madness. In the ancient world, this was a known symbolic way to issue a summons. By sending one piece of her body to each of the 12 tribal territories of Israel, he was forcing the entire nation to look. He was making them bear witness to the atrocity that happened in Gibeah. It was a visceral, bloody, unforgettable call for justice.
And the nation's response? Absolute fury. This one horrifying act ignites a brutal civil war. It pits 11 of the tribes against the tribe of Benjamin because Gibeah was in their territory and they protected the criminals. We're talking about a war that was so bad, it nearly wiped an entire tribe of Israel off the map.
So after all that, what are we supposed to take away from this? Well, this story is basically a portrait of a complete and total moral collapse. The people of Israel had become indistinguishable from the wicked nations they were supposed to be different from. Their spiritual leadership, represented by the Levites, had utterly failed. And without a king, without any central authority, even the act of seeking justice just devolved into more horrific violence. The whole story, really, is one giant dark argument for why Israel was about to start demanding a king.
You know, the reaction from the rest of Israel really says it all. The message that went out with the pieces of the body was, "Has such a thing ever happened? Consider it, take counsel, and speak." They themselves recognized this as an unprecedented low point. Something so terrible had never been seen in their nation's history, not since they left Egypt. It was a stain on their collective soul, and they knew it demanded a response. And that brings us right back to where we started, to the final, chilling summary of this entire era. It's the verse that bookends this horrific tale. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And what this story shows us, in the most brutal way imaginable, is that when there's no shared standard for truth and justice, when everyone just decides for themselves what's right, the result isn't freedom. The result is the horror of Gibeah. It's a profound and timeless warning about what happens when a society completely loses its moral center.